Critical Role returns with an episode that leaves some fans fuming. A fantasy icon enters Mortal Kombat, and Monster Manual 2024 gives us a first look at some surprising monster stat blocks.
That escalated quickly.
Welcome to Fantasy News Friday on the Character Sheet, but before we dive into some TTRPG news and Critical Role spoilers, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep this channel growing, and then let's dive into the news. Critical Role returned after their 1-week hiatus due to the LA wildfires, but that return was marred by a big betrayal, some very awkward moments, and a large amount of fan backlash. The episode itself saw this group of level 15 misfits come together to, well, kind of kick the crap out of Predathos, which in itself caused a lot of questions in the chat about how this was supposed to be some sort of god-eating entity, along with Fern once again saving Imogen from a failed roll to resist Predathos by calling out her name, aka actually getting to use her much better saving throws to negate Imogen's bad throws, which a lot of the fans felt like was a cop-out for resisting the will of a god-eater, especially since Fern and Imogen have never really built up any kind of intense bond before these final episodes. That's largely just been between Imogen and Laudna. But the biggest moment of the combat came when it was revealed that Breas had stolen the mask of the Matron of Ravens from Laudna and replaced it with a fake before the fight began, and that he was still working towards the will of Asmodeus.
It's just business, guys.
But in the first of several instances where the fans accused Matt Mercer of railroading in this episode, Laudna was somehow allowed to use her movement to put her face into a mask clipped to Breas' belt so that Matt could trigger a pause in the combat for the final conversation with the matron he clearly had planned. This led to what appears to be the final decision on the fate of Exandria's gods, with Bell's Hells deciding they will let Predathos out under Imogen's control, and then force the gods to flee or give up their immortality to be safe. The forces of the gods rushing in to seal up Predathos and Imogen back in this cage basically forced the Hell's hands, and once again upset some fans with the sort of visible railroading aspect of it all. It was also followed by Matt, who apparently realized how silly it was for a bunch of level 15s to fight what is basically a god-level threat, to give them a boon that gave the entire party a temporary level increase to 17. Although that did make it feel like this campaign was perhaps a bit rushed at the end, and hadn't really been allowed to hit the kind of level cap Matt was expecting before the final fight, but it did lead to some genuinely hilarious and brilliant choices by the cast, like Ashton taking the tough feat for a boatload of additional hit points at level 17. The last bit of the show, in which the Hells came back and once again kicked the crap out of Predathos, was also derailed by the cast, and specifically Ashley, having issues with the mixed character rules from 2014 and 2024 in D&D Beyond. And yes, we literally talked about this problem yesterday, but the awkward integration of 2014 and 2024 rules in the character builder basically derailed the show for 10 minutes as everyone tried to work out how a spell was actually supposed to function because of its 2014 and 2024 iterations. So between the cast struggling with the D&D rules, Matt's more visible than usual hand guiding to the storyline, and the very real threat of Breas fully turning on the party at any point now, it was a pretty controversial return for Bell's Hells, who will now face what could be Predathos' final form in the next episode.
Can't wait!
Conan the Barbarian is joining the fight in the new Mortal Kombat. The iconic Conan the Barbarian, modeled off of the Arnold Schwarzenegger version, from his looks to his accent, is joining the cast of Mortal Kombat 1 Chaos Reigns for early access players starting on January 21st. The brutal barbarian, who is one of the first true fantasy heroes, feels right at home in the blood-filled fighter, wielding his sword to slice through enemies and unleashing some classic Conan quips in the process.
Beware of Shang Tsung. He is a snake.
I know what to do with snakes.
So will Conan crush his enemies and see them driven before him in this new Mortal Kombat game? We only have to wait a few weeks to find out.
You seem way too excited for this fight.
And we finally have a release date for the beta boxes for the new Gundam card game that will officially launch aside the Gundam Assemble Miniatures game this July. The beta boxes, which offered cards from the beta set of the game, will now have an official early release so more fans can check out the game before it goes live this summer. These beta boxes will be available for sale in just 2 more weeks at the very end of January, and feature the cards players were using to beta test the game for the past few months. The July launch will feature starter decks that use a mix of these beta cards and some new cards, as well as launch alongside the new type Rising boosters, which will feature entirely different cards from the beta as well. But if you want to get some physical cards in your hands to play what could be the year's biggest new TCG, you can find it at your local game store in just a few weeks.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
And finally, Wizards of the Coast has revealed a ton of official stat blocks of the new and improved monsters from the 2024 Monster Manual, and some of them seem truly terrifying. While some stat blocks revealed, like those of the skeleton-type monsters, show how D&D is pushing to have a bigger variety of challenge ratings within a specific type of monster, so things like skeletons aren't just a low-level threat you start steamrolling around level 3, other stat blocks showed off how they're tuning up existing creatures, especially dragons, to be much more potent threats for higher-level parties. The Gold Dragon, for example, has access to more layer actions, including Banish, but it can also just unleash a level 6 Flame Strike or a constant barrage of level 4 Guiding Bolts if it wants to now, and has constant access to the Shape Change spell. And since it's more dangerous in its own layer, its XP actually goes up if you defeat it in its own layer, which is true of chromatic dragons as well. The Green Dragon in particular looks terrifying with its Poison Breath and Cloud Kill spells and charm-based abilities. Dragons just seem genuinely frightening now. We also got to see the stats for the Haunting Revenant, aka the Haunted House, which has the ability to teleport players inside of itself to do additional damage and even have the ability to shut off their spells, which is pretty intense. We also got our first look at the new Empyrean Iota, also known as Titans, which now look a little more otherworldly and less like a World of Warcraft character, and can toss out healing words, bless, or lesser restorations while floating around in their ethereal states. The new stat blocks with the modifier and the save for each stat listed side by side are much easier to read than ever before. They just make a lot more sense visually, and with this new focus on more powerful and impactful monsters, which they seem to be delivering on so far, the Monster Manual 2024 may be the first truly must-have book of the new 2024 lineup. So that's all we have for Fantasy News Friday this week. Let us know what your favorite story was down in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.